Too hot for TV.
Welcome back to Doctor Who Too Hot for TV. We are the podcast that looks at all things Doctor Who Extended Universe. Today, I'm joined by a brand new guest. It's Gareth. Gareth, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, Dylan. Glad to be here.
It's wonderful to have you here. Now, I must start, as I always start, with a new name, a new face, and ask you how you became a Doctor Who fan.
Oh, it's lost in the mists of time, but probably similar to what some folk have said before. I became aware of Doctor Who in 1986, having watched Blue Peter, a program I didn't usually watch, where they unveiled, the L1? It was the L1 robot.
Right, yes.
And I was absolutely fascinated by the clips. I thought, I have to watch this. And so I was introduced to the Trial of a Time Lord, and I thought it was wonderful. And then I watched the next 3 years of Sylvester McCoy and thought that was great too. Wouldn't have said I was a fan by that point, but I enjoyed the show.
Yeah. What's interesting about that is fan lore would have us believe, and we get this a lot with the McCoy era particularly, that, Doctor Who had gone shite at that point and viewers weren't coming in and new viewers weren't coming in. But there you are, jumping in at what is seen as a quite controversial season. But yeah, I love it.
The Trial of a Time Lord for me, I've argued this with a couple of people, is great TV for me. I will watch it at least once a year.
Agreed.
Because I just thoroughly enjoy it. It's so engaging. The performances are fantastic. I don't get really what people's beef is with it. Yeah, there was an alternate version that could exist out there in some universe, but I don't care. I like the one that I'm presented with. But I didn't become a fan until the 92 repeats, the William Hartnell, Time Meddler, Mind Robber, and Sea Devils. That's when it really got me.
That's a common jumping on point.
Yeah, I did think there was the Resistance is Useless documentary I think I watched. In my memory, my dad had told me a few nights before, oh, Gareth, you might want to watch this. You like a science fiction. This show's great. You might want to check it out. About 20-odd years later, apparently, he turned around to me and said, you might want to watch this for a giggle. It's crap. So it's funny how the memory cheats, but those three serials were the ones that made me try to connect the dots then back to the one I'd seen before. And then there was that glorious 1992 yearbook that's got the 7 doctors on the front and a Sea Devil in the bottom corner.
Yeah. With
the program guide in the middle, and my paper is ash in the middle of that at the moment because it got well thumbed, let's put it that way.
That 92 yearbook, I remember going through and with a biro and correct, because it said whether it had been released on VHS and things like that.
Yeah, the little circles and boxes. Yeah.
And I remember going through and correcting some of them because they had been released on VHS. And I've got a memory of being on holiday with my family somewhere by the coast and doing that and having, say, I'd saved up my pocket money and I had like £20 or something like that, and looking and going, oh, I didn't know this, but Dalek's Invasion of Earth is available on VHS. And from that point, there was no ice creams, no treats on the holiday, because I knew when I went back, I had to go and seek out that double video and find it. And the rest of the holiday was just like, when can I get back and buy Dalek's Invasion of Earth?
You see, the videos for me came about nearly a year later. I think City of Death was my first one at the back end of 93. In fact, it was Christmas 93. I picked 4 VHSs on the market and said, I want those 4. City of Death, Dominators, Terror of the Autons, and Earthshock.
Amazing.
Said, I want those
Good
4.
mix. Good mix.
And then I got the Trial of a Time Lord in as well on that particular Christmas, unbeknownst to me. But what that program guy did for me was our library had loads of Doctor Who books. And it meant then, in my simplistic brain, I couldn't really afford DVDs on the pocket money I had at the time. So I sought out the Target books.
Yeah.
So a lot of my early experience of Doctor Who is through Target books. Funnily enough, I'm reading Frontios started rereading that today for the first time in 20-odd years. And I've suddenly remembered that I'd read that first before I even saw it, because that came out at the back end of the VHS range.
Yeah.
So a lot of stories are already in my head of how I would have directed them, how I would have done them on screen.
Mm.
And it's interesting having a comparison to that, because then it's like, right, well, I've read those and I can see these stories as well. You then learn about the missing stories and you get deeper and deeper into it. It becomes archaeology, absolute archaeology.
I remember the particular Target books that I loved that stood out to me that were very different when I saw them were the Horns of Nimon. When you remember those glowing red eyes, that creepy cover, and the Nimon looking sort of slender and menacing the Doctor.
It was a golden time, an absolutely golden time of going through it. And even when I went to university in 97, it was then the New Adventures for me.
Mm.
You know, I was digging through all of those and trying to get hold of some that had gone out of stock by that point and were disappearing. And again, I'm rereading a few of those at the moment for the first time in 20-odd years. So I'm getting to re-experience everything again.
Yeah.
So it's like almost like a second Renaissance reading at the moment for me. And you know, equally that comes with the Blu-rays and the enhanced pictures that I'm now experiencing. You know, what's the first Blu-ray I ended up getting? Well, it was The Trial of a Time Lord, wasn't it? I had to get that one and then watch the extended cuts on it, because it's like, it's more. And that was so strange for me to see footage of Colin I'd never seen before, slightly extended scenes.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I'm much the same, because those late 80s ones, there's a wealth of sort of extra scenes and stuff, and you're like, I didn't know this existed. I didn't know you could have more Happiness Patrol. So you mentioned the New Adventures. What is your relationship with spin-off media? Do you consume a lot of it? I can see many a book behind you.
Yeah, it's predominantly the books that I go for at the moment. I got heavily into Big Finish when it first came out. I kind of drifted away from their stuff probably about 10 years ago or so. But I've kept the faith with the Sixth Doctor range, because it's my Doctor. You know, I want to keep up with that. But I've kind of run out of space on the old shelves behind me here, and I don't think I can make it to pure digital yet. I know I've got to get with the times. I just don't know, because there's something very nice about holding that CD in your fingers.
I know what you mean.
And experiencing it. And digital, I'm just a bit scathing. I think Amazon Music scarred me for life with their music player. That's the way my stuff keeps disappearing, reappearing, and then never appearing again, and them telling me I never ordered it.
I see.
But yeah, so in terms of the wider spin-off media, though, beyond that, I haven't really touched down on much of it. I'm aware of it, and I know of it. I think in terms of BBV, I think I did, was it Punchline?
Yeah.
With Sylvester McCoy, which I got when I was at uni, and I played that repeatedly.
Written by Rob Shearman, or under the pseudonym Jeremy Ledbetter.
Yeah, it was when I was studying to be a performer back then, and you know, I really got into that one. I have done a few other things like Bidding Adieu and The Air Zone Solution, and I think I've done a couple of the Myth Makers.
Right.
So it's not greatly in depth in the extended media. But it's certainly dipping my toe in.
Well, you can't do it all.
No, the bank account won't allow it, sadly.
I increasingly find when you jump into this, like, there are people whose thing was the books or is the books. There's people who it's the audios. There's people who it's the BBVs. There's people who it's the comics, and it might be a different set. Like, there are people who just are missing in New Adventures, and other people who are just PDAs and EDAs, and some people are just targets, and some people are Big Finish main range only, or they're like 8th Doctor only, or 6th Doctor, like, and it's fascinating. Like, you just gravitate towards the things that you're attracted to. And one of the things I like about doing this podcast is people will bring me things that, not because I don't want to, but just, as you say, bank balance and time, I would never experience, because it's not quite in my sphere.
Yeah, and it is the beauty of this particular podcast in terms of looking at that wider media and what there is out there. The couple that I've listened to and gone, oh, might have to go seek that one out, or that does sound quite interesting. And I like that, because I am aware that my own existence only has certain confines, and my abilities only have certain confines, and so anything that broadens me out, well, I'm probably too broad, but that's by the by. But you know what I mean? Anything that enhances that experience has got to be a good thing.
Exactly. Totally agree. So, which kind of brings us nicely onto the things you've chosen to cover today, which is something that I've wanted to dip into for a while, but I wasn't really aware of the whole lore behind it, I guess you'd say, and the history behind it, which we'll get into. So what are we doing today?
We are going to be covering Doctor Who comic strips, but ones that feature the Marvel Comics character Death's Head.
Excellent. We're in the Marvel Universe.
Too hot for TV.
The first of these is The Crossroads of Time, which was printed in Doctor Who magazine 135, released on the 10th of March 1988 from Marvel Comics. It was edited by Richard Starkings, written by Simon Furman, the artist was Jeff Sr., and the lettering was by Zed. News at the time: Daleks roll in. Production was gearing up for Doctor Who's 25th season, with JNT announcing the first story would be called Remembrance of the Daleks and would be helmed by last year's, and I quote, glossy Time and the Rani. While Davison rolls out, Peter Davison will not be around for much longer. Not what you're thinking, but this is literally what it says. After he's completed All Creatures Great and Small, him and Sandra Dickinson are going to move to America, where he's going to pursue his career there. Yeah, I mean, I don't really remember Davison having a big career in America, and obviously that marriage ended. And the only other bit of merch that was out at the time was the Time Meddler novelisation.
Too hot for TV.
Death's Head collides with the Doctor's TARDIS in the vortex, forcing both to land on a barren moon. A Time Warden appears to investigate but flees after seeing the towering Death's Head. The Doctor narrowly escapes Death's Head's grip and uses the Master's time tissue compression eliminator, which only shrinks the cyborg to the Doctor's size. Still dangerous, Death's Head pursues the Doctor while the Time Warden repeatedly retreats. Realising he can't win, the Doctor lures Death's Head into the TARDIS, tricks him and teleports him to the 81st century, just as the Time Warden returns.
Too hot for TV.
So we are hurtling towards Doctor Who's 25th anniversary, and we are hurtling towards the end of the show, although nobody knew it at that time. And here we are, slap bang in the middle of the Marvel comic strip universe, I guess you'd say.
That's an interesting point about the series ending, because although this comic strips originally printed in 1988, I didn't come across it till 1989 when it was reprinted in what was the Marvel Bumper Comic Holiday Special.
Ooh, what else was in that?
Galaxy Rangers, Thundercats, Transformers, Combat Colin. Basically, what before Doctor Who even entered into my life, I'd been a big comics kid. If there was a cartoon, I would rather watch that than watch people on TV. And so I gravitated then to all kinds of tie-in comic books, so Thundercats, Transformers, Action Force. Especially if it had a Marvel logo on it, I was on it.
Right.
And the Marvel Bumper Comic seemed to be the best of both worlds. It had real Ghostbusters, it had Thundercats, it had everything in there.
My childhood right there.
Yeah, I can remember taking that magazine on holiday with me and just devouring it. And I wish I still had it now. And I know they're all reprints in there. I just don't have it. And I know I read it to the point of disintegration. But obviously I've made up for that since, because I've been and got a copy of Doctor Who magazine 135, haven't I, since?
Yeah.
It's funny, though, because like I say, in 1989 when I got it, I wasn't aware the show had ended. It just stopped, like any kid show kind of did in the 1980s, or the sort of stuff that I watched. It wasn't until we get to the 92 repeats and then I realised the totality of what had actually happened there.
Yeah, I don't think I knew that it had finished as well, because you just didn't. Like, programs were on, and then they went off, and sometimes they came back, and sometimes they didn't. I remember waiting for Mysterious Cities of Gold to come back.
Did you know there was a sequel series?
What?
The Mysterious Cities of Gold. I was doing a read up on it last night.
What?
Yeah, no, you can't get hold of it. There is some videos on YouTube, and a chap will give you the history of the Mysterious Cities of Gold. It's about 14 minutes in length.
Right.
Watch it, because it talks about the fact of how it was created, but also then that the rights get mixed up somewhere, and someone buys the rights off of them and gives it to somebody else as a spiteful thing. So they own the rights. So they made a sequel series that was, I want to say it was 2012.
Right. Okay. So much later.
And you can't get them anymore. Apparently, those sequel series aren't available. Sorry, I've digressed.
No. We're here for a digression. I bought Mysterious Cities of Gold on DVD recently, and God love it. Like I watched the first disc, and I've been away since, but I will get through it all. There's certain things in your childhood, like Century Falls and Dark Season. If you'd asked me whether I'd seen them, I would have said no. When they were released on DVD, I was suddenly like, especially Century Falls, I remembered swathes of it, but I just probably hadn't clocked what it was called at the time, and I remembered Dark Season, and those things would end. And they sort of drifted out of my mind, but specifically Century Falls, it sort of brought back this memory of going, when's there going to be another Century Falls? But there just wasn't. And that was the same with Doctor Who. It's only when you become a dyed-in-the-wool fan that you go, this travesty that they haven't, they haven't made another series. But I remember seeing Death's Head in Doctor Who magazine when I was first buying it, and I wasn't buying it regularly. It was something that if you saw it at the newsagents, or if my nan saw it at the newsagents, she'd pick up a copy and go, here's a Doctor Who magazine, you like Doctor Who. And I'd look at the pictures, I wouldn't really read anything. But I remember there was an advert for the broader Marvel Comics universe, I think it was, and it was the Seventh Doctor and Death's Head. And I remember the image of Death's Head has been burned in my mind ever since, from a very young age. I must have been like 8 years old or something like that. And when I first started this podcast in particular, I remember looking into it and going, that's something we should cover at some point. Here we are, 5-6 years later. But
yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, Death's Head, we might get a bit more into his lore as we go through this, but he was the poster boy, really, for the Marvel UK comics industry.
Right, okay.
Marvel basically did a couple of limited series. Beyond what we're about to talk about, Death's Head did go into his own series, and we will cover that. But at the same time, they did things like The Knights of Pendragon.
Right.
It was totally original, but with things like Captain Britain in it and stuff like that. And obviously, you then get what was the late 90s push on Marvel UK stamping itself with a whole revamp of characters. Super Soldiers, Motormouth, Kill Power, Plasma, Dark Angel, originally Hell's Angel, and Death's Head was obviously taken into that fold. So he was a poster boy. In fact, they even had a suit made up of someone to parade around. You can see images online of Death's Head 2, a bloke in a suit, along with all the other Marvel characters like Spider-Man, Captain America, and this massive cyborg in there as well. He was a mainstay, but the character himself, in terms of his beginnings, actually originally appeared in Transformers. Don't worry, we will get to the Doctor Who stuff, folks. This is a bit of scene setting for people, because
we're in the Doctor Who universe right now, guys. Don't you worry.
Like our errant time traveler, Death's Head has similar time travel escapades. The character first appears fully in issues of Transformers, going back to my sort of comics past and tying with media. But Marvel really liked the design on the character and went, well, if you put it in Transformers, then Hasbro will own it, and we won't be able to use that character. So what Marvel ended up doing was doing a one-page advert. I don't know why I've just done quotation fingers, but I've just done quotation fingers on a podcast, but I'm sure you can hear them. They took a one-page advert out that was basically a short 9-panel thing called High Noon Tex, which is basically about Death's Head taking out this other bad robot. And that meant that Marvel retained the copyright on Death's Head. So you first see him in Transformers, where he is hired to take out the evil Decepticon leader Galvatron.
Right.
And at the end of that, he gets thrown into a time vortex.
Which leads us nicely into this. But it's important to say, within the Transformers, he's about the same size as a Transformer, if not bigger. Yeah,
he is. He's exactly the same size as those massive robots.
So, who is Death's Head? Or what is Death's Head?
Well, Death's Head is a freelance peacekeeping agent, if you want to be nice to him. Otherwise, he's a bounty hunter with a predilection for saying yes at the end of a sentence. He is a bit of a no-nonsense, gun-for-hire, with not so much crazy streak like Deadpool, but with certainly a more acerbic wit, I think it's fair to say. His original appearances doesn't go into his origins. Those are teased out later on. You eventually discover that he was created by this bounty hunter who had ability to transfer himself into other bodies, but everybody he transferred himself into, he basically burnt them out very quickly.
Right.
So he built himself a body to go into, and his lover at the time didn't really like him. because she shacked up with somebody else and he went and killed. Well, he didn't go and kill him. He basically possessed that other bloke's body.
Right.
And she's like, whoa, this is a bit much for me. I'm getting you for this, you so-and-so. So what she does is she creates a personality for Death's Head, or as she puts it, her own wiles, business acumen, sensibility, and she puts that into him. Then there's a bit of a black hole on the character, which we will come to later. But we first meet him in strictly Marvel appearances in the Transformers. There have since been attempts from Marvel to fill that gap in.
Yeah.
So there's a stint, if anyone finds it, there's issues of the Invincible Iron Man,
Oh, wow.
where Death's Head appears in. Yeah, Tony Stark goes off on a giant space adventure, and Death's Head is in there. The full-size Death's Head. I think he appears in issues of Sword, if memory serves me right, which is this sort of intergalactic version of S.H.I.E.L.D. I did warn you this was going to get quite dense on some of this.
This is what people are here for.
Join us, join us.
And it's nice for me to learn stuff. Usually I've got all the information, but not this time. I am a Death's Head virgin.
They've tried to utilize that time period that is unknown to the start of Transformers. Although, of course, Marvel would never say Transformers anymore because they don't have the rights for that comic.
Of course.
So they just refer to it as Giant Robot War more often than not. If they ever reference Giant Robot War, it's the Transformers. So Marvel have made attempts to fill in some bits with Death's Head. But as we're going into the crossroads of time, we're following him into that explosion that sent him into the time vortex as he's hurtling one way and directly into the path of an oncoming TARDIS.
And it's a beautiful image. Like, I was immediately struck by just like, okay, that's very cool. This giant creature that's, let's say, I don't know what it is, flying towards the TARDIS. So am I right in thinking this story basically exists as a gateway into the broader Marvel Comics universe?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what it feels like, because this then leads where the story goes to. It essentially sends him on the journey. The Doctor is responsible for sending Death's Head into the Marvel universe. You could argue that the Transformers could occur in another universe, although we all know that Spider-Man appeared in, what was it, issue 6, so the Transformers are part of Marvel. But the Doctor sets him on a path of his life that will bring him into contact with. After Doctor Who Magazine 135, Death's Head then appears in an issue of Dragon's Claws, where you learned what happened to him.
Right.
And when he goes from Dragon's Claws, that one issue appearance, he then gets his own series for about 10 issues.
I see. Okay. So how does it utilize the Doctor within the Death's Head universe or the Doctor Who universe or the Marvel whatever universe it's in?
Well, the Doctor in the crossroads of time is a bit of a victim. I think it's fair to say it is literally an accident in space. They bump into each other, they crash on a planet, and a Time Warden appears, and there's a great scene where this large Death's Head is literally picking up the Doctor between his forefinger and thumb, and the Time Warden just goes, do you know what? I should deal with this. I'm not having it. It's not on my watch. I'm off. And basically Death's Head, because he is a businessman, says, you know what? If you can give me something, I'll let you go and we'll just call it quits. So the Doctor starts going through his pockets, emptying everything out, and ultimately he lands on a tissue compression eliminator.
Hey.
Which he ends up firing at Death's Head, which you think could have frazzled him, but actually just turns out to have reduced him to the same size as the Doctor, obviously slightly taller because it's Sylvester McCoy. And what then ensues is a game of cat and mouse between Death's Head and the Doctor, essentially running around, and the Doctor realising he's never going to be able to outwit Death's Head or get past him on his feet like this. And so he basically concocts a plan whereby he surrenders.
Yeah.
And says, do you know what? If you like time, how about a time machine?
Yeah.
And drags him over to the TARDIS. And once he's in the TARDIS, the Doctor says, right, I'll set the coordinates. You need to do this. Right, I'm off then. See you, that's yours now. And Death says, like, no. You need to come back. You need to show me how this actually works. I want you to take me on one journey. So the Doctor goes, okay. Doctor presses a few buttons and Death's Head disappears. Time Warden comes out and the Doctor reveals that basically he's used the TARDIS controls to lock onto Death's Head and send him somewhere, anywhere. So the Doctor's excursion into the Marvel universe is very limited in this. I mean, this just feels like it is a standalone, and I don't know if genuinely if it was an attempt for Marvel to try and draw readers in to their planned Death's Head series. You know, you've got the younger generation reading the Transformers comics, you've got Doctor Who magazine, you've got the Dragon Claws, which was their first American style format book, and then those all dovetail into what becomes the Death's Head series.
You've got to wonder whether anybody even realised at this point that Death's Head was from another thing or he was going on to something else? Because if I'm 7 or 8 reading this, I don't think I'm going, my brain's not immediately going, it might go, I want to know more about Death's Head, but it's not going, Death's Head has his own comic. And
No.
obviously it's mainly there. He can't be this giant in the rest of the Marvel universe, so somebody needs to shrink him down, and the Doctor's the perfect person to do it.
I mean, yeah, does feel like a complete standalone story, and there was a lot of them in the Seventh Doctor's run where they were just like one issues, or even like the Incredible Hulks presents, where there are muchness about them. It's only when we look then at the tapestry of the story that then unfolds. You know, this is, we know latterly, the first running of the two of them.
Yeah.
And it seems very casual on the face of it, even though he's tried to kill him. It does seem very casual. But the interesting part for me as well with this, and again, this comes back to my nerdy comics reading, is the name of the writer and the artist. And so Simon Furman is a massive Transformers writer.
Right.
I think that there's many folk around now that won't recognise that name because he did most of the. Sorry, I'm pointing at them. I've got the Marvel run behind me of Transformers comics. He produced most of those, and even went on to write for IDW. Jeff Senior was my favourite Transformers artist. The way he does his drawing, slightly blocky, slightly skew with, it almost makes the artwork feel a bit more like 2000 AD. And in some ways, Death's Head kind of feels like a 2000 AD character. Because he wouldn't seem out of place in like Judge Dredd or anything like that.
Absolutely not. He feels slightly more out of place in Doctor Who, weirdly, which I know we say the format can do anything. And I think this is quite a strange comic strip for Doctor Who because it's set after season 24. And I'm very used to seeing the Seventh Doctor comic strip being this a brooding character that's sort of taken more from the season 26 end of things and the New Adventures, and he's always in shadows and always looks very contemplative. But here, even in moments of threat, he is drawn as the clown, the Paradise Towers Doctor almost, you know, and it's quite interesting to see that moment in time, that even against this huge threat, it's very much more time in the Rani than it is Curse of Fenric.
Yeah, there's a couple of panels, isn't there, with really toothy grins on there.
Yeah.
You know, normally in a comic you just get the white line of the teeth, but they've actually put the gap between his front teeth. It's blatantly there.
It's just a lovely little bit of the Doctor Who lore that is sort of forgotten about because it's a one-off story.
Yeah.
It does link into these other things, but it's not part of one of the great comic runs or anything like that. But it's nice to see those two characters interact and then sort of find out where it goes.
Yeah, I mean, the Doctor Who strip that was in the Marvel bumper comic I got, this particular one, Crossroads in Time, meant that I wanted to then get the Marvel bumper comic actually went into its own series.
Right.
I want to say for less than 20 issues, and I think I only got it up to about issue 7. And the reason why I only got up to issue 7 was because they then went and did Claws the Clarthy, sort of Victorian London strips, and they basically reprinted those for about 6 issues. And then for some reason they dropped Doctor Who out of Marvel bumper, so I dropped off that.
Oh, that's a shame. It's interesting to sort of chart the Doctor Who comic strips journey when it is with Marvel. You know, especially when you get the early ones like the Star Beast and it's Stan Lee presents the Star Beast and things like that, his name everywhere. And I think it appears somewhere in the Death's Head range as well, but I'm sure we'll get to that.
Yeah, and it's interesting as well because when you look at when they did the first 4 issues of the Doctor's appearance in the US comic style was in Marvel Premiere.
Right.
They did the Star Beast and was it Iron Legion?
I think so, yeah.
Over 4 issues. But also there's Spider God. And Spider God sits in a separate thing. It's actually a Star-Lord special edition. So it's a huge thing about Star-Lord, which if you read it, you'll go to Guardians of the Galaxy and go, but it's not like that. And Spider God's just slotted in at the back of it very randomly.
Wow. They're all over the place. It's about what we can package together that we think kids will buy and what we can reuse and resell. Do you have much more you want to say on this first story, or shall we move on?
Only that this is my favourite comic strip of all time, and I absolutely love it.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Oh, wowzers.
This is my favourite. And again, it's the first one I ever experienced.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There is a lot of nostalgia for me for this, in literally everything it's drawn in. I mean, you know, I actually, as a result of this comic strip, not only do I follow Doctor Who with things like the Terrestrial Index
Yeah.
that gives you the whole rundown of the comics, but I go down a massive Death's Head rabbit hole because the character's so infrequent in the Marvel universe.
Mm.
I think the last ongoing series that they had was a 4-issue miniseries, and I think I worked out the other week that was about 6 years ago they released that. He appears so infrequently that when he does appear, it's almost like an event. You know what I mean? I must go and get issues of that.
So we're not going to rate this. We're going to rate the whole saga at the end because, as we'll find out, it's all interlinked together.
Too hot for TV.
We leave DWM, and this time we're at Death's Head 8 for Time Bomb, which was released in July 1989 from Marvel UK. The editor was Steve White. The writer was Steve Parkhouse. The artists on pencils, we had Art Weatherill, Steve Parkhouse on ink, cover art Brian Hitch and Mark Farmer, colorist Louise Cassell, and letterer Annie Halcafrey. So, news at the time, Battlefield had been hit by industrial action and had to stop shooting for 48 hours, while Curse of Fenric lost an edit day and a recce for Survivor was cancelled. But fortunately, no stories went the way of Sharda. The running order for the final season of Doctor Who was confirmed. David Banks had recently played the Doctor in The Ultimate Adventure, and Who Dares Publishing was going to stop doing calendars. And it was also announced that Sylvia Sims would be featuring in Ghostlight, and Hale and Pace would be playing shopkeepers in Survival. And the releases at the time, we had Tom Baker's Mythmakers and the Target Book of the Chase. So coming right to the end of Doctor Who's classic run,
Too hot for TV.
Dog Bolter, head of Intravenous Inc., hires the mercenary Death's Head to kill the Doctor, equipping him with a prototype time machine. After encounters across history, Death's Head finds the Doctor, who lets him into the TARDIS. They soon learn the prototype time machine carries a hidden nuclear bomb controlled by Dog Bolter. The Doctor and Death's Head transport it back to Intravenous HQ, destroying the base in a massive explosion. Afterwards, the Doctor leaves Death's Head atop a skyscraper, offering advice on self-improvement, but the building is none other than the Four Freedoms Plaza, setting up a confrontation with the Fantastic Four.
Too hot for TV.
So why are we not in Doctor Who magazine?
I'm guessing at this point, Marvel's trying to push the American-style comic book. So Marvel originally dipped their toes in it with Dragon's Claws coming out of the UK, which was a Jeff Senior drawn series. The sort of techno future seems to work well with people who are going to buy the book. And Death's Head was no different in some ways. They set Death's Head at the same time that Dragon Claws existed. You'll have to forgive me, I can't remember what year it is. I want to say 8162, but don't quote me on that. And basically, we've gone through the book for quite a while, literally building Death's Head back up from being blown apart, and him getting his life back together, and him getting a partner who he doesn't particularly want, and there being lots of attempts on his life by different people. He also ends up with a pet vulture that he didn't particularly want. The pet vulture, of course, is the one that is revealed from Keepsake. So again, you have got a kind of Doctor Who tie-in there. The comic strip Keepsake, where the chap has a vulture with him to remind him of his wife, and that he helps the Seventh Doctor rescue this medic. You find out what happens to him and the medic after they leave Doctor Who magazine in Death's Head in an earlier issue. So, yeah. But when you get to the back end of Death's Head's run, and Death's Head's original run was only for 10 issues.
Right.
So this is issue 8, which has got the Doctor in it. Issue 9 features the Fantastic Four.
Right.
Issue 10 features the Iron Man of 2020, and then it's finished. Now, I don't know this, but for me, when people start bringing in so many characters again and again and again and again, it's almost like they're trying to save the book or get some sales and interest in it.
It's not standing by itself. You need to get more people in.
It feels like it should need something else to get people into it. But for whatever reason, it never did. By the time we get to number 10, that was it for the original UK run of Death's Head.
So how does this incorporate the Doctor? It's a Death's Head comic strip, but the Doctor is a major character in it. This isn't like a little cameo.
No. And not just the Doctor either. We get Dog Bolter and Hob. who I think were in, was it a fourth doctor? No, they meet each of the other doctors, don't they, previously?
Yeah.
If memory serves me right. I did find a little one-pager in one of the incomplete Death's Head ones that gives you a bit of a lowdown on all of that. I meant to send it over to
Really?
you, and I forgot. Yeah, it wasn't in an issue that featured the Doctor, and I thought I must take a photo of that. I don't think I sent it you. But basically, Dog Bolter doesn't like the Doctor because of the number of times he's been stopped by him. So basically, he hires Death's Head to kill the Doctor, and Death's Head is basically saying, "Well, you know what? I'll do this for free because do you know what he did to me? He shrunk me." And basically took his TARDIS away from me that was mine. So they strap a pack on Death's Head and say, well, this will take you through time and you can eventually get the Doctor and then basically terminate him. What we then get is a montage of Death's Head using this device on his back to transport himself to different time periods, looking for the Doctor, not finding him, and then eventually finding the Doctor. And the Doctor's in Panto, dressed as a jester, of all
As you
things.
do.
Which is funny when you think about where he ended up being King Lear. You know, it's and again the cat and mouse game then begins of Death's Head trying to track down the Doctor and get him. And by the end of the tale, what we then learn is the Doctor realizes that Death's Head's got a massive nuclear device strapped to his back that's about to explode. It turns out to be a double cross from Dog Bolter to take out Death's Head and the Doctor. So what the Doctor does is transport Death's Head back to Dog Bolter's headquarters. And they blow that up instead. Wizard.
This feels to me like a kid's comic. Like, and I don't mean that in a disparaging way.
No.
But like, because season 24 feels very much like Doctor Who for kids for me. But as a kid, I would have adored it. And I think probably the same here is true. But it feels like the sort of story they're not telling in Doctor Who magazine because the comics are sort of for a slightly older, a teen audience, if you would say, like a slightly older teen audience. So coming to this, as much as it's got the character of the Doctor in it, I'm very well aware this is a Death's Head comic, not a Doctor Who comic.
And I think that's fair because the artwork in it seems more comedic in this particular one, in the actual issue. Not the cover, the Brian Hitch cover.
No, it's amazing.
Is an amazing cover. And again, I can't believe I didn't recognise a Brian Hitch piece of art. That's very, very bad on me.
Comic, especially older comic covers, can be the biggest catfish you can ever get, though, because obviously the whole big thing about the cover art, and they get different artists to do it, and you can get these amazing covers sometimes, and it's just not representative of what's inside.
I think one of the nice things about spotting something like this, though, is that obviously Brian Hitch ended up doing the Ultimates. You could argue that without Brian Hitch, you don't get the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The way the costumes are designed in the Avengers movies are basically born out of the Ultimates. And even Nick Fury was drawn by Brian Hitch. Anyway, I've digressed again, haven't I? Sorry.
Please do.
But even the artwork doesn't look like Sylvester McCoy in it.
No.
That is something I can't see past. When we first agreed to do this and I reached out to you about it, I had to double check about Time Bomb and that I'd not misremembered it because I can't quite see him. I'm looking at a page now in front of me and he just isn't accurate to Sylvester McCoy at all.
I wonder whether there's a little thing about likenesses here. And I don't know. I haven't found any information about it.
No.
But whether they've gone, you've got the approval to use the character of the Seventh Doctor, but we've got to pay more to use the likeness of Sylvester McCoy. So what about if we just do a slightly more
generic McCoy,
generic comic-y McCoy? A bit like there was a series of Aliens action figures that came out in the 90s, and Ripley and various other of the Marines don't look like their characters, and that's because they were redesigned because they wanted to use the character of Ripley, but they didn't want to pay Sigourney Weaver.
They're the Kenner ones.
Yes.
Yeah. I remember those coming out because my brother was big into Aliens at that time. And he really wanted one. He never got any.
Yeah. I had a few of them. And there was the Bishop one as well, didn't look like Lance Henriksen. They turned him into sort of a RoboCop figure. They even went to the trouble of shooting some photographs of new actors in the roles and putting them on the packaging of it. There was a whole big thing about how actually they were meant to be part of an Aliens kids cartoon that they never got past the pilot stage. But I think that's been debunked. But anyway, we digress. What I'm saying is, I wonder if it's a similar thing here where they're going, we're using the Seventh Doctor, but it's not the actor Sylvester McCoy.
Yeah, and that would seem entirely plausible. Because even the TARDIS, I'm just having a look at the TARDIS interior, is yellow rather than white. Weirdly enough. But it's, as a tale in itself, it's great because basically it calls quits between Death's Head and the Doctor. So all the animosity that was between them from Crossroads of Time is basically null and void.
Yeah.
As far as Death's Head's concerned, you've helped me get revenge on someone. That's all right by me. You go your way, I'll go mine.
Which is why when we meet him in Party Animals, he goes, we were...
I think I can call him a friend.
Exactly. It's a fun story. Again, I don't think you would tell the story in Doctor Who magazine, and I sort of come out the other side going, I could imagine loving this comic as a kid. And I would have loved to have been a Death's Head fan that picked up this Death's Head and saw my Doctor there. I just think it instills a sort of wishful nostalgia of things I didn't quite experience as a kid. I think it's brilliant that these things exist.
Yeah, well, again, it's one of those things that, like you say, normally Doctor Who is in Doctor Who things. It's Doctor Who related. But other than the picture of the TARDIS on the front cover, you wouldn't know it was Doctor Who.
Absolutely.
So it could be one of the things that even fans wouldn't necessarily pick up because they wouldn't have been looking in that direction for it. And I don't think there's any direct reference made to it as a story in Doctor Who magazine itself. I think he is referencing the Terrestrial Index, if I remember.
Right.
But yeah, there's not much more coverage of it.
You've got to wonder, did anybody buy Death's Head and get into Doctor Who that way? Because I'm assuming Death's Head, obviously, as you say, isn't doing very well. But I don't think Doctor Who magazine was one of Marvel's big properties. So I wonder if they thought by, especially crossing these two over, they were going to get a bit more, in the way that you don't need to with the Fantastic Four, say, try and push the sales of both of these things a little bit more.
Possibly. I mean, they do try marketing once, just after the Death's Head series finished. The character they do push into other Marvel books. He appears in Fantastic Four 338 and Sensational She-Hulk 24. That's Sensational She-Hulk 24. For anyone that's listening, do not get Savage She-Hulk 24 like I first did one time, thinking, great, I've got this one. No, not quite the same one.
Too hot for TV.
The next thing we're going to cover is Party Animals, printed in Doctor Who magazine 173, which was released on the 18th of April, 1991. Again from Marvel Comics. The editor was John Freeman. The writer was Gary Russell. Artists were Mike Collins and Steve Pinney. And the letters were by Gilb. News at the time. Doctor Who costume sale. The London auctioneers Bonhams are holding a second costume sale of Who material on the 11th of May 1991 in Knightsbridge. Things you could possibly get there out of 150 lots were 2 Daleks, a Cyberman, Silurians, Sea Devils, and Vervoid costumes. How exciting.
Sign me up now.
I know. And the latest rumours surrounding BBC Video, which was printed in the news page of the Doctor Who magazine, there would be a further year's tape, this time featuring Tom Baker reportedly sitting down and watching clips from his stories. Obviously, that would come. But even more interesting, and I'd not heard of this before, there was a proposed video project to feature Sylvester McCoy playing the Seventh Doctor, providing linking material for Sharda in a fireside chat with his companion Sophie Aldred. Now, I think that is a brilliant idea. I love the Sharda video release we get and the many other versions, but a little adventure wraparound of Sylvester McCoy and Sophie Aldred doing that would have been bloody brilliant.
That's a good idea, that.
It is a good idea, but it wasn't to be, and Sharda would ultimately appear a few years later with Tom Baker. And then releases at the time, we had on VHS, The Spearhead from Space. We had Doctor Who Variations on a Theme from Silver Screen Records, which was 4 different versions of the theme tune, 3 of which have been used by this podcast, and the other one's the Latin version, which on the time that's used. And also on VHS, we had Planet of the Spiders and City of Death.
Golden times.
Indeed.
Too hot for TV.
The Doctor and Ace travel to the planet Maritha to attend the birthday party of their friend Bonjax. The celebration brings together a vast assortment of characters from across the Doctor Who universe and beyond, including Daleks, Absam Dark, Shade, and even future incarnations of the Doctor. And of course, Death's Head. Amid the festivities, the Doctor briefly glimpses his own future before the event descends into a chaotic bar fight, leaving him caught up in the wild, unpredictable energy of the party.
Too hot for TV.
So straight up, this one, just in terms of the personnel, and obviously as we get into it, in terms of the story, this is more of a Doctor Who story, it feels, than a Death's Head one, would you say?
Absolutely, absolutely, it is. I mean, this is basically the Doctor touching down almost on a bar outside time and space.
And how does Death's Head feature in it?
He's a patron in the bar. So within this bar, it's neither in time nor space. It kind of sits outside it. And people will eventually appear here at some point. It seems like the Doctor has been here before because he introduces himself and is recognised. But there's a myriad of, if you look at all the panels, of different characters that's in there. Just to give a flavour, and I'm not going to read them all out, don't worry, because we'd be here for some time. There are things such as Two Daleks in Love, Bart Simpson,
Yep.
Worf, the Star Beast, Captain Britain, the Destroyer, as Sontaran, the Master. And these are all background characters. He goes on, I think there's Cyclops from the X-Men in there somewhere as well.
Doctor Strange is in there.
Yeah.
Rocket Raccoon's in there. Thunderbird 3.
I think the Freefall Warriors are in there as well, aren't they?
There is a Ghost Rider. It looks like a lawsuit waiting to happen, because I'm assuming all those things weren't cleared. But if ever you want to question what universe any of it's set in, and I'm using the word universe a lot today, but I feel it's apt, this screws all canonicity.
Yeah.
But it's done very tongue-in-cheek, and I imagine if DWM or IDW tried to do it today, it would not happen at all. But it goes to show, A, how unaware of their brands people were, and also how few people were paying attention to Doctor Who comics, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, the comic itself sits in the middle of a massive magazine that unless someone's going through that, they're not going to necessarily see it. But Death's Head actually seems to be a patron in this bar. Now, whereas all the other characters, they're never particularly referenced by the Doctor in the story, he does point out Death's Head at one point over the shoulder of Ace, I think it is, and goes, I think I could call him a friend. And it's literally as glib as that. And I think that Death's Head is one of the few characters that does talk when essentially a massive bar fight breaks out.
Yeah, that's basically the story.
Oh, there is one other highlight, which is the first ever appearance of Nick Briggs as the Doctor.
Well, indeed. Well, physical appearance. He's been on audio.
Oh, true. Yes. How could I forget?
We get a fourth Doctor cameo as well.
Yep.
And it's a fun little moment that we get this Nick Briggs Doctor, who will obviously later come back and be revealed as Shade, isn't it? That it ends up being a sort of decoy Doctor. But it's a fun little thing that I imagine delighted and upset fans in equal measures at the time when they saw it.
I'm going to admit something, dear listeners, which is that I did not possess the original for this.
Right.
Initially, till I started doing my research for this very podcast. And I can't tell you how many DWMs I trawled through. Well, I probably could actually, because there's a finite number, isn't there? But, I suddenly realized I'd not got, and I had to go out and get one. I had to go and seek the issue out with the very somber-looking John Pertwee on the cover there. Don't know what they were trying to say with that cover, sadly.
Back then, it was just like, oh, here's a new picture of John Pertwee. We'll use it, even if it is him at a press day or whatever, looking quite somber.
Again, like you said, this is very similar to the Crossroads in Time in that it's almost a one and done.
Yeah.
Kind of story, a nice fluffy little piece.
But this time, it's very much the Doctor Who universe. And while there's all those other cameos, it's the Doctor Who monsters that are at the forefront.
Yeah, the Sontarans, the Draconians, yeah.
The cameos from other stories and other worlds are very much in the distance and sort of loosely done. So perhaps you could probably say, oh, no, it wasn't meant to be that, honest. So it's a Doctor Who story. It's technically, it's a multi-Doctor story. Not a lot happens. It's more like a fun celebration of comics, to be honest. But what I'm wondering is, what's Death's Head been up to since we last met? Has he gone on to be in loads of other things in the 2-3 years that have passed?
Yeah, so I think the big feature of Death's Head as you see him here is he's been taken apart, blown up. When he goes over to Dragon Claws after Crossroads of Time, he is, at the end of that story, quite literally, he's terminated. Just like the Terminator, he gets his legs blown off. He's literally a chassis just pulling himself along, trying to get hold of people. And somebody finds him, and basically, I think issue 1 of his actual ongoing series is them basically bringing him back online.
Right.
In this all new body. So before he was a sort of green colour. Now he's kind of yellow, the red cape, the blue shoulder pads. This is the sort of classic look I think most people would think of when they think of the character of Death's Head.
And obviously, at this point, we're very much using the Doctor Who writers and the Doctor Who artists. So, what do you think of the art and the look of this strip and the way they handle this tiny little story?
It's interesting because especially when you look at things like the Meep really fits in with the original pictures of the Meep. And this is Mike Collins, is Mike Collins on the strip? He has been in the strip in recent years, hasn't he?
Yes, he's been on and off Doctor Who for a while, I think, but he's certainly done his time.
Yeah, and I think the nice thing about the artwork though in this is it kind of feels light enough for the piece itself.
It feels to me a bit like every frame is like a Where's Wally book of interesting images. You spot something new every time that you're like, that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, when I read this for this, I did have to go back and go, you know what, I'm going to spend an evening just going through each panel and seeing what I can pick out. That list that I read out was just some of the ones that I got on an eyeball.
Yeah.
Of just trying to figure out, and then I went, do you know what, I could keep going on this and pretty quickly go back through it every time and seeing what else I can find.
We could just do an hour-long podcast listing everything that's in there.
At the very beginning, isn't there even a penguin getting booted out of a police box?
There is
very
indeed.
First shot with someone with striped trousers. Could be the 6th or 5th Doctor for all we know. Just you see this leg booting them out.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it, because it's sort of that cyclical thing, isn't it, that perhaps the Doctor's been there before. And it's a fun little tribute to Doctor Who in comics, and that's what I really like. A lot of meat to the story, which is again why I didn't want to rate these individually, because it's really hard to sort of go, oh, that was a lot of fun, but does it have any merit to itself by itself? And the
but
answer
again,
is probably not.
It is interesting to point out that Death's Head is in there, and the Doctor does reference it.
Because there are many races and characters in this that you think the Doctor would reference, but this is the one that he goes, it's Death's Head, which I think is an interesting point. Are you ready to move on from Party Animals, or do you have anything else you want to say?
Yes, indeed.
Too hot for TV.
The next thing we're going to look at is the incomplete Death's Head issue 12. Now, at this point, the release date is October 26, 1993, although the cover date is December. Published by Marvel Comics UK. Editor John Freeman. Writer Dan Abnett. Artist Simon Colby. Penciler Simon Colby. Inkers Sean Harry, Neil Bushell, Tim Perkins. Colorist David Leitch and David Boyle. Letterer Annie Parkhouse and Gary Gilbert. Doctor Who news at the time. William Ems and Ron Jones had just died. The Missing Adventures were announced as arranged, and script editor Terence Dix had a new novel called Uproar in the House published. During a promotional visit to the House of Commons, he explained that he was no relation to Tory MP Terry Dix. I'm in the phone book, but he isn't, so when he says something offensive, I'm the one who gets the abusive phone calls. And merch at the time, we had Annika Will's Mythmakers. We had House Dameron Walker's book Time Frame. The new adventure was Blood Heat, featuring the 7th Doctor, Ace, Benny, Liz, Joe, Benton, and the Brigadier. And on VHS, in a blue tin, we had The Trial of a Time Lord VHS.
Whee!
So, I mean, great time for merch. And indeed, a seminal point in your life.
Oh, honest to God, these fingertips. Sometimes when I close my eyes, because the TARDIS tin was left by Father Christmas on my bedside table. And I can still remember reaching for my light on Christmas morning and feeling the indentations of the panels on the tin.
Beautiful.
And I can still feel them on my fingertips today. And that amazement of, what's that?
I remember the Dalek and the TARDIS tin coming out and only being able to save up enough pocket money to get the Dalek one. And I don't think I got the TARDIS one for, say, another 6 months because, I was on £2 a week.
Who'd you get on the bottom of your TARDIS tin?
My TARDIS tin was John Pertwee from the 5 Doctors. Who's on the bottom of yours?
Peter Davison.
Part of me would love to collect all 7 tins, but I won't.
It's so tempting.
Yeah,
tempting.
It is.
Too hot for TV.
In a shifting mix of virtual and real worlds, 2 versions of Death's Head reflect on missing records in Hobbs' archive, speculating about time travel and questioning Hobbs' true intentions as they witness events on Maritha involving the Doctor. Hobb, obsessed with forcing Death's Head to find Dog Bolter, clashes with Tuck and grows more dangerous until both Death's Heads intervene, with Death Head 2 determined to protect her. As the struggles escalate, the 7th Doctor arrives, revealing he orchestrated elements of Death's Head's past to ensure Hobbs' defeat and prevent the original's death. Though wary of the Doctor's interference, Death's Head 2 ultimately spares the original, saves Tuck, and leaves with her, while the Doctor prepares to restore the original Death's Head to the party on Maretha.
Too hot for TV.
So it's been a while, a couple of years for Death's Head. We're back in Death's Head 12. So what's been happening? This is a new range of comics?
So, brace yourselves, people. We're going
I'm
into the
braced.
temporal vortex here. Marvel UK has been born by this point as a full-blown company. They're going all out into the American market with loads of different titles. They did an anthology series called Overkill in the UK, which was basically, I think it was 60p when it first came out, and you got like 4 stories in there. So there was Warheads, Digitech, Dark Angel, Knights of Pendragon. I think a 5th one comes into rotation. But eventually, they reveal Death's Head coming back. Around about issue 13, I think it is.
Right.
And so you can experience those adventures. Since then, I've discovered that everything that was presented in Overkill was actually American comics. They just reprinted them for the UK audience with some edited highlights. So we join Death's Head now, hunting in this series called Death's Head 2. And Death's Head's basically killed.
Okay.
Literally ripped apart. So there is a robot being created called Minion, the Minion Project. And Minion is designed to be the most effective killing machine ever, as you do, in the year 2020. And the reason what makes him effective is he is going to be built up of 107 personalities
Right.
of various ne'er-do-wells and well-known types that will make him that effective killer. Subject 106 that he assimilates, literally assimilates this giant spike in his head, is Death's Head.
Mm-hmm.
He then malfunctions because he's just attacked another robot and apparently hasn't done that before in the previous 105 personalities. And he goes off then to get subject number 107, Mr. Fantastic of the Fantastic Four.
Right.
Now, those eagle-eared of you out there will know that I mentioned the Fantastic Four had actually met Death's Head, and Death's Head rescued their son Franklin from doom from their own security system. So they knew Death's Head, and they basically trap Minion and make the Death's Head personality the dominant personality in the Minion cyborg, creating Death's Head 2. So he's dropped his predilection for using the word yes, but he is now one badass cyborg with an arm that can become any weapon he wants it to be, and he time hops everywhere, and he basically does bounties, freelance peacekeeping stuff, just like the original Death's Head used to do in essence. It's the same story, but a different chassis.
Mm-hmm.
Literally. And as a kid, I always kind of hoped, when I was still getting into Doctor Who at this point, that there would have been a story with the 8th Doctor and Death's Head 2 meeting. They both had an upgrade. They both changed. Wouldn't that be fun based on what we...
Wouldn't it?
And then I went a bit deeper on the Death's Head lore and basically discovered that they did the 4-issue miniseries of Death's Head 2's introduction, the destruction of Death's Head and a massive alternate reality getting blown up and all of this.
Mm-hmm.
They started a regular Death's Head series, which I think ran for 16 issues before Marvel UK brought down the shutters on everything.
Mm-hmm.
But in between issue 4 of Death's Head 2, the miniseries, and issue 1 of Death's Head 2, the regular series, they brought out the incomplete Death's Head because they were concerned that people saw this 2 on there and wouldn't know who this character was, what he was about. And this is where the incomplete Death's Head comes in. So what the incomplete Death's Head does is reprint all, bar a couple, of Death's Head's adventures over 12 issues. So in this issue 12, for example, Party Animals is reprinted in there in its entirety, in colour, along with the Sensational She-Hulk 24, which is actually really, really funny.
It is. I had a great time with that.
Just Plant Man's reaction. She goes, come on, then you're going to attack me. He goes, can't. No plants. just like a bit pathetic looking.
You told me to read the last few pages, but I did the whole comic, so technically I've read Party Animals twice.
Yeah, no, and that's no bad thing with where we're going to go to eventually. What most people look at this go, it's just a reprint series. It's just taking the original issues of Death's Head and representing them all. And it does. But there is a framing device throughout, bar except one issue, I think, randomly, that doesn't have the framing device in there. There is a framing device that Death's Head 2 and his partner, a lady called Tuck, who's actually a robot herself, or an artificial life form, they arrive at a location. They don't know where it is. They don't know why they're there. But all of a sudden, Death's Head 2 seems to be attacked. And as a result of that, a machine is then playing out the memories of Death's Head 1. And we basically then, over the next 10 issues, intersperse an entire reprint of a story from Death's Head's past, along with maybe a panel of either Tuck in some kind of jeopardy because actually there's a giant creature roaming around wherever her and Death's Head 2 are, and he's completely locked into whatever he's locked into.
Yeah.
Or Death's Head 2, who's trapped in his own head with what appears to be his original personality looking at him. So the original Death's Head's trapped in cyberspace with Death's Head 2. And there's a bit of tete-a-tete with them, shall we say, you know. In pretty much you would get, think multi-Doctors folk, but with more guns. And issue 12 gives you the culmination of this.
So issue 12 gives you the culmination, as you say. I immediately picked up. I was like, "Oh, it's a clip show. Like, there's a framing device." I was like, Friends did this. It's something you do on television when you've got 24 episodes to fill in the 90s, and you need a bit of a breather. There's a framing device. You film 5 minutes of new footage and 20 minutes of clips, and I just thought, right, I'm in. I care what this is.
Yeah, and it's beautiful because I don't think the original Death's Head run had a massive printing for it. I know I paid quite hefty prices for some of the issues I got at the time that I got them. And this is a time when trade paperbacks weren't really a thing, don't forget. We're very much used to now comic books reprinting their collected editions you can get in even high street stores like HMV. But back then, that just did not exist. And that's what put up a lot of prices of the back issues. So this was a great way to experience all those old stories. I think the body in question is the one that's missing from this. I think there's a few panel references to it, and that's a corking tale, but I'm digressing. But this brings the culmination of the story, because what we reveal is that the creature that has trapped Death's Head there is actually Hob, the robot servant of Dog Bolter, and he's turned himself into some kind of maniacal nasty.
Yeah.
Because he can't find his master and thinks his master might exist somewhere within Death's Head's memories and he can find them that way.
And so how does the Doctor fit into all this?
Well, you wouldn't think the Doctor was in this. If you look on the face of it, there's nothing on the cover to tell you here. If you look in the complete 7th Doctor special edition from the early 2000s that Marvel put out, Panini, sorry, purporting to have everything covered with the 7th Doctor, it's not even referenced in there. I even wrote to them about amending it and to put something out, and I was basically told, no, this was a reprint, we wouldn't do anything on this. What would I know? But on the last 3 panels of this book, what we basically find out is Death's Head 2 realizes they are on Maruthia, which is the same place that appears in Party Animals.
Well, look at that.
Yeah, this story happens co-terminus with the events of Party Animals. And this is Hobbs' follow-up plan because he realizes that if he can't get Death's Head 2 to help him, he's going to get the original Death's Head. The reason why this then becomes interesting is because you think all hope could be lost here. And Death's Head 2 gets out of the cyber system he's trapped in, joins up forces with the original Death's Head 1, who we saw in Party Animals, and they try attacking Hob, and they win. Sounds great. But where is the Doctor in all of this? Where is he? And then suddenly we get a tissue compression eliminator fired, and it knocks out the original Death's Head. And there he is, in the last 2 pages of this mammoth. I don't think Maxi series didn't really used to exist much in Marvel back then. The 7th Doctor innocuous against the TARDIS.
Wild.
Basically revealing earth-shattering reveals, on one of which I hadn't actually remembered till I did this reread. So the Doctor reveals that this is for him, this particular Doctor is post-Party Animals.
Right.
So he recognised that Death's Head was on Maruthia, and there's a question about how did he get there? What is he doing there? Why is he there? And then he suddenly twigs that perhaps he had something to do with it. Because the Doctor then reveals he's been nudging Death's Head's life this entire time. Clang!
Because, of course, we've now got the more manipulative Seventh Doctor that we got in his final season.
Yeah.
The clown we met in the earlier Death's Head comics, if I'm just coming it from a Death's Head point of view, has long disappeared. It's a weirdly nice way to bring the progression of both of those characters within their own runs together, isn't it?
Yeah, and essentially the original Death's Head, the Doctor returns to the party of Maruthia, and we know the rest of that then through party animals. The shocking revelation beyond this, so that in itself was the big revelation, that basically he has orchestrated for Death's Head 2 and Tuck to arrive on Maruthia to try and sort out the Hob problem. And again, it's him manipulating everything. He's the one that's got them there because they didn't know why they arrived there. And again, like you say, it's the Seventh Doctor laying the traps, laying things in. But it's then the other revelation, which I didn't remember, which was, I think I mentioned very early on, the original Death's Head was created as a body for this bounty hunter to exist in as he went through life. And him becoming Death's Head in itself, we know the personality was put in there by his lover, but we don't actually know how the robot body ever got set up or how it left or even how it got to the Transformers universe. I know, but I can hear people shouting, there's the Iron Man and the sword thing you mentioned earlier, Gareth. But bear with me, we're dealing with real chronology here for when these things were originally done. And the Doctor reveals he's the one that nicked Death's Head's body and sent him over to the Transformers universe.
I mean, this is complicated stuff. This is more complicated than the TV show's done. Stephen Moffat's got nothing on this.
Oh, it gets really squiffy later on in Death's Head's run. But it doesn't have the Doctor in it.
Do the Doctor and Death's Head ever meet again?
No. This is the last time. Death's Head 2 basically threatens him at the end and basically says, stop playing around with my life now. You stop it. I mean, yeah, again, you've got the wonderful size difference between McCoy and Death's Head 2. And I think he actually says, and I quote, if I ever find you manipulating me again, I'll kill you so often you'll run out of incarnations.
Brilliant. I guess as well, we're only a few years off at this point, Marvel dropping the Doctor Who brand or it going over to Panini. So at which point, like, the character is not available to them.
Yeah, and as far as I'm aware, he never appears again. Death's Head himself kind of disappears once Marvel UK dissolves. Death's Head 2 had a massive run in Marvel. He was in every one of their series. Motormouth, the Knights of Pendragon, Dark Angel, especially brought in at the end of their runs as if they were trying to boost the sales up. And I think Death's Head 2 issue 16 was the last one they produced out of Marvel Comics. So they really used him till the end.
And would you say this particular story or this presentation of old stuff and the wraparound story is a fitting end to the Doctor and Death's Head saga?
Yes, it does. It ties it up very nicely because when we first met them, he was on his way out of the robot universe and literally slams straight back into him. And then you have this nice relationship between the two of them that's on and off, between Time Bomb and Crossroads of Time. We get to this point, we see how it ties into Party Animals. The bits are starting to fit into place now, and it feels like the nice coda to sort of end that relationship. I think this is the 8th Doctor appearance I would have always wanted to. That would have been the icing on the cake. But you know what? I can settle for this. Because
we're a few years too early.
Yeah, it literally rounds his time out very nicely with that character. That they learn it on an even keel. Even that even keel isn't that even because, was literally a threat against his life here saying, bog off and don't come back again.
Yeah. Do you have much more on this particular issue before we wrap things up?
No, only I would say is it is definitely worth trying to get hold of it. Like I say, if you look at the cover of it, you won't see a TARDIS on there. You won't even see, because it's funny, on the front cover it just says guest starring the sensational She-Hulk. So they literally keep the 7th Doctor's appearance under wraps in this.
And the She-Hulk thing, as I said, it's a fun little story to have in the middle of it. So looking at the Death's Head and Doctor Who thing as a whole, is it a successful crossover? Because it was a confusing thing to unravel even when we were talking about it online of like how it pieces together. But do you think it works cohesively when you look at it as a whole?
I think it does, but then I could be blind on the two characters that are involved in it.
Yeah.
Because I have, very similar to Doctor Who, Death's Head's past for me has been archaeology, trying to discover issues and work my way through it. And again, I've not fully connected the dots. I've understood it, but then I've connected even more dots when I've reread it again and gone, goodness, how have I missed this? How have I not seen this element? But I think it rounds itself up very, very nicely. And it's played out over a period of time as well. I mean, we started in 88.
And here we are, 93.
93, so it's a number of years, so it's a very slow burn for a story and a tale told over such an expanse.
So as much as I had the issue of trying to figure out exactly what I was reading, which we went back and forth over a number of times.
That was partly my confusing messaging going back and
no,
forth.
not at all.
Well.
But also, like, comics can be confusing because, I mean, I found this, my favorite comic is Daredevil, and I was like, oh, I'm reading the Man Without Fear run, and then I realized they're all called Man Without. Like, it's like I was trying to piece them together, and I was suddenly getting like issue 1 from one run and issue 2 from another, and it's like, this doesn't make any sense.
It's when you read the original DC stuff and you're reading all the different, when you find out there's like different worlds of each of the characters, and they cut off certain years, but you're looking at comic now going, Supergirl's an alien? What? a shape-shifting alien? When did that happen? I'm sure I just saw her be killed in 1986. Hey?
But having said all that, reading these 4 things back to back, I wasn't sure what I was going to get, but it made perfect sense. And I was like, oh, that's a lovely little run. Although, as we know, it's not really a run because it happens over such a long time. But it's lovely that it's there for people if they want to piece it together. And like, whether you're a Death's Head fan or a Doctor Who fan or both. So I thought that was lovely. So where does Death's Head go after this? Because you mentioned that he hasn't appeared for a while, but are there future adventures?
So, Death's Head 2, as I said, ended on issue 16. And there's 2 appearances of Death's Head 2 since that are noticeable. One of which is a surprise cameo, yes, in Captain Britain and MI13, which is written by Paul Cornell.
Excellent.
He's literally in the bottom panel where there's all these British superheroes. The other appearance of Death's Head 2 is in a series that they created called Revolutionary War, where basically Marvel got all those heroes they created in the 90s together in the UK and created an overarching story. So each character there were 2 overarching issues, a sort of bookend, and then 6 issues in between. Death's Head and Death's Head 2 had their own. Again, it's a very convoluted plot, but the basis of it is that the big bad guy from Marvel UK, the Mistech board, seemed to be coming back of some description. We don't know why, we don't know how, and we catch up with all the heroes many years later. So, like Harley Davidson, Motormouth, she's now got 2 kids. She was a hard-nosed teenager, but we discover that she's got 2 kids, and these things just come in and attack her. Dark Angel ends up re-looking at her powers with the devil and things like that. Death's Head has an interesting dilemma. It's really convoluted because Death's Head is brought in to find Death's Head 2 without actually explaining who Death's Head 2 is. But that's the last time we ever see Death's Head 2. I think Liam Sharp, the artist who originally drew Death's Head 2, did try to bring Death's Head 2 back, or Death's Head 3.0, and Marvel didn't take it up.
Right.
There was a appearance of a character called Death's Head 3.0. I think that was written by Simon Furman, that appeared in 5 issues of Amazing Fantasy. And that was a result of a campaign of Marvel to see which character people wanted to be told in these issues.
Oh,
and they voted
amazing.
for that. But that character bears no resemblance to Death's Head. It's not even really related to him. It's a very, very odd series.
Okay, cool. Interesting. So quite an obscure character within the world of comics as well as, Doctor Who.
Yeah, the last time we saw Death's Head, the original Death's Head, I think he cropped up in Avenging Spider-Man for 1 issue, X-Men 97 or 92 for 1 issue, like the odd appearances he was having. He had a brief stint in Iron Man itself, but there was a 4-issue miniseries, which is the last thing he appeared in. And this is the clincher. We've been talking about time traveling all the way through this, but this is a story whereby Death's Head meets the creator of Death's Head 2, and she basically stands there and goes, "Oh, were you expecting," and it's a lady in a business suit, and she goes, "Oh, were you expecting this lady?" and holds up a picture of the lady who created Death's Head 2, the one with all these cyborgy bits around her, and goes, "Oh yeah, that's from an alternate universe, that." Right. And by the end of that series, by the end of that 4-issue miniseries, she's working with Death's Head to give him upgrades.
Right.
So the inference being that the Death's Head, the minion cyborg that becomes Death's Head 2, was possibly created in an alternate reality to the Death's Head that now exists in the Marvel universe. And oh, forgive me, I've gone cross-eyed.
Yeah, that's a bit complicated.
Yeah. So like I say, but I presume they've done that because they like the original version of Death's Head and want to continue with that character going forward.
Fair.
But as of yet, I don't think there's been a peep out of him since. I did see, I think there was an appearance of Death's Head 2 round a table with some other Marvel killers in like Marvel Comics Presents or something like that with Ghost Rider and a couple of others. But I don't think he really says anything from what I can gather online.
It's a cameo rather than like let's bring the character back.
Yeah.
Is Doctor Who part of the Marvel Comics universe?
It's interesting when you look at these because we know that at least 2 of them were set on Maruthia. We know Death's Head has time travel capability himself. He has actually worked for the Time Variance Authority, the bods from Out of Loki. So the argument could be made that this is indeed the Marvel Universe, because that's where Death's Head resides and Captain Britain. But equally, you could say not.
Marvel Comics UK were publishing Doctor Who within Doctor Who magazine. I think what stops people sort of putting them together is there was never a comic-only run.
There should have been, though, because that was going to be the Age of Chaos.
Right. The one with the Doctor and Doctor Strange.
No, Age of Chaos. This was the one, the Colin Baker story.
Oh, right.
Colin Baker did Age of Chaos. It was supposed to be a 4-issue miniseries. And I think they had problems with the artist, if memory serves.
Right.
Because he wasn't producing them quick enough for them to go to print, which is why you get the first issue within that collection that they did. It's one artist, then another artist that does the last 3 parts. Because that's the only way they do it. But the plan was that was going to be its first time, its first original material in an American-style comic book format.
For Marvel, written by Colin Baker. That's phenomenal. Because there were, I guess what I was referring to, there were plans for Andrew Cartmel wanted to do a comic strip where the Doctor meets Doctor Strange as well. That was something that was on the cards at some point.
I can believe that. And I think that's partly what probably kept me in the 7th Doctor's era when we got to that. Because I've always felt that does feel slightly 2000 AD in terms of a lot of the worlds that are presented in that. And so it would fit in quite easily.
I also think there's an argument to be made, if you're the sort of person that doesn't want these things to meet, that Doctor Who travels in time and space and the multiverse or whatever. And it feels like the comics are the perfect place for the Doctor to be able to use the TARDIS as a narrative device to really, we talk about telling every story possible, but to really transcend genres and universes and franchises and IP and all these other things. And we've seen it with that they did the Star Trek one many years later. But I love the idea that you could do a comic and the Doctor just show up in it because that's how he works in the comic strip world.
Well, it's the same with a lot of the franchises. I mean, when I saw that they were doing the Star Trek and Transformers one, and I went, how on earth is that going to work? Honestly, we're taking the animated Star Trek series as a style and the 1980s Transformers, and actually it was bloody good.
And I love that comics seems to be the place for that. I think Hollywood will get there at some point.
Oh, yeah, that I have no doubt, yeah.
Once the Marvel and DC wells are run dry, they'll go, how can we make these interesting? And they'll go, Batman, Spider-Man, let's make some money.
Well, you had Jason versus Freddy, so anything's possible.
Well, exactly. So, to round this up, the saga of Death's Head within the Doctor Who universe, or the saga of the Doctor within the Death's Head universe. Is it a clanger, a banger, or an average meander?
Well, I mean, I think I've said I'm quite nostalgic about this. What were the 3 options again?
A clanger, a banger, or an average meander?
Banger.
A banger. Banger all the way. Well, as someone who's come to this afresh, it's a banger for me too. I had no idea that this was such a rich, complicated thing. It told in a very slight way, but just how it all weaves together. The type of storytelling they're doing here is years ahead of what the show was doing at the time, and indeed what it would do when it came back. Like, we don't get there till 4 or 5 years into the run of New Who, so, like, brilliant, fantastic stuff.
Too hot for TV.
So thank you for joining me today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
If people want to find you on the internet, do you have anything you want to plug, anything like that?
Yeah, so I'm on X as at GJ Bowley. I'm on Instagram at G_J_Bowley and on Blue Sky at Gareth Bowley. If you do like the sound of my voice, you can hear more of me. I'm part of the Hamster Book Club, so with some other colleagues. But you can hear me in many audio dramas that are out there on the interwebs. If you just type my name, you'll generally find something of mine. If not, there's a profile on Podchaser with my stuff on. I would recommend anything on there. I will throw up now Starship Excelsior because that's something I've been involved with for many, many years. And I think they've got another episode with me in coming out soon. So
Excellent.
we will see. And also, I think they've recently, I think there's been another guys that have announced that they're going to be bringing out a thing called Starship Resilience. So hopefully that will be out soon. But yes, I'm on other Doctor Who podcasts as well. I don't waffle on as much as, no, but a little bit.
This was wonderful waffling. You've come here, you've taught me about something I didn't know about. This is what the people want. Next time, I'll be joined by Ross from the General Witchfinders, and we'll be looking at 2 Medlin Monk stories, The Secret Histories and Subterfuge. But until next time, I've been Dylan.
And I've been Gareth.
And this has been Doctor Who Too Hot for TV, the Death's Head edition.
Too hot for TV.
And he suddenly realised that Death's Head being there, hang on, I tie myself up in knots now. I knew I'd do this. Hang on. I wrote something down for this. Knew it. Absolutely knew it. Yes.